Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Wednesday, May 19th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. Well, we know today is the birth date of one Malcolm X. He would have been 96 years old if he was still alive today. So we'll talk some about Malcolm X and his legacy. Also, on Monday's show, I told you that a very important hearing was going to take place in the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties. And this was dealing with the Tulsa Race Massacre, of May 31st and June 1st, 1921. So that that hearing took place today, and 3 survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre were testified today. Okay, you had Viola Fletcher, who turned 107 years old last week. Viola Fletcher, Leslie Randall, and Viola Fletcher's brother, Hughes Van Ellis. They all testified today in front of the House of Representatives, the House Judiciary Committee, to talk about the Tulsa Race Massacre, the impact it had on them, the fact that they basically lost everything, and they are demanding reparations. But also this ties into HR 40 as well, House Resolution 40, HR 40 in the House of Representatives. This ties into HR 40 also. Okay, so we're going to talk about that on today's show. It was I watched a lot of the hearing, so it was a very good hearing, and it was historic also. A lot of historical information came out, and then we'll also talk about Paul Mooney, legendary comedian Paul Mooney. Passed away this morning of a heart attack at age 79. Many of us know Paul Mooney for years, writing partner with Richard Pryor. Paul Mooney was I remember Paul Mooney on the Richard Pryor TV show on NBC that lasted maybe 4 episodes, something like that, in 1977. Paul Mooney, stand-up comedian, actor, brilliant comic, brilliant comedian. But Paul Mooney passed away at age 79. So we'll talk some about Paul Mooney as well. All right. So hope everybody's doing well. Share this broadcast on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't teach or do what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, we have the information there. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and jump into this information dealing with the testimony that took place today, dealing with Black Wall Street. We know we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Okay. And so this hearing is very, very timely as well. So Viola Fletcher, who's 107 years old, her 100-year-old brother, Hughes Van Ellis, and a third survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre, who's 106 years old, Leslie Benningfield Randall. They all appeared and testified today in the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties. All three are lead plaintiffs in a reparations lawsuit filed in 2020, filed last year, against the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, the county of Tulsa, the state of Oklahoma, and the Tulsa Chamber of Commerce. Now, the lawsuit argues that Oklahoma and Tulsa are responsible for what happened during the massacre, which historians believe left as many as 300 African Americans dead, 10,000 homeless, and the predominantly African American community of Greenwood largely destroyed. I'm looking at the reporting from the Washington Post. It says Greenwood was destroyed. It was largely destroyed. Majority of it was destroyed. We know Booker T. Washington High School was still standing because the American Red Cross used Booker T. Washington High School as a makeshift hospital to treat the wounded and things like this. So it was largely destroyed. The other thing that's important to understand, we're going to go to clip one here in just a second, Shakita. The other thing that's very, very important to understand is that we rebuilt Black Wall Street with our own dollars. We rebuilt Black Wall Street after the Tulsa Race Massacre with our own dollars. And this is something that oftentimes gets totally left out of the conversation. People focus on the destruction, but don't focus on the fact that we rebuilt the Greenwood district. Now, that does not mean that we should not get reparations, or those survivors should not get reparations. Yes, they should, because the insurance companies did not pay on the insurance claims on the homes and businesses. All right. And the Tulsa City Council and authorities in Tulsa, they said it was the African Americans' fault that the riot took place in the first, with the massacre. They called it a riot, but the massacre took place in the first place. We got blamed for the massacre. Okay. So I want to go to, we're going to go to clip one here. This is from MSNBC. Survivors of the 1921 Tulsa massacre testify before House committee. Okay, let's go to clip one, Shakita.
1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, ahead of the 100-year anniversary later this month. In the early 1900s, Tulsa's African-American district of Greenwood was known as Black Wall Street, with its own luxury shops, restaurants, movie theaters, a library, hospital, even its own bus and taxi service, until the evening of May 31st, 1921, when a white mob descended on Greenwood, shooting Black people indiscriminately and burning more than 1,200 homes, hundreds of businesses, along with churches and schools. Some survivors saw airplanes dropping turpentine bombs on houses. And when the massacre ended 48 hours later on June 1st, 1921, according to witness accounts, hundreds of survivors were rounded up at gunpoint and forced to march to camps where they were held for weeks. Survivors also recounted seeing Black bodies dumped into the Arkansas River and into mass graves. Well, today, two of the last living survivors of that massacre flew to Washington to share their stories and demand justice. Mr. Hughes Van Ellis, known as Uncle Red, is 100 years old, and his sister, Ms. Viola Fletcher, or Mother Fletcher as she's known, is 107 years old. Listen to what she experienced during one of the darkest moments in U.S. history.
I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see Black men being shot, Black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see Black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot. I will not. And other survivors do not. And our descendants do not.
Both were gracious enough to stop for a minute to talk with me on their way to the White House, they said, for a meeting with Vice President Harris. It's important for you to be here in Washington today and share your story.
Well, we really wanted justice over this affair accident. Such a long time ago, we were thinking for now that something has been done about it. So that's why we're here trying to make sure we get justice for her.
Ms. Fletcher says as a result of the massacre, she never finished school beyond the 4th grade, never made much money, and struggles to support herself. The survivors are part of a reparations lawsuit filed last year, which argues that Oklahoma and Tulsa are responsible for what happened during that massacre, which historians believe left as many as 300 Black people dead, 10,000 homeless, and the community of Greenwood destroyed. Mr. Van Ellis, who is a World War II veteran, told lawmakers today, quote, "Please do not let me leave this earth without justice." Blessings to the both of them.
Okay, so that was Jeff Bennett reporting for MSNBC. He was there at the hearing and got to meet Viola Fletcher and Hugh's Uncle Red Van Ellis. Okay, so good reporting from Jeff Bennett. Now, there was a lot of history that was covered at the hearing today. Okay, and I watched a lot of it. I shared it on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. It's on YouTube. It's actually one place you can find on YouTube is the House Congressional. What is this? The House Judiciary Committee, I think it is. I'll give you the exact location on YouTube, but it's Continuing Injustice, the Centennial of the Tulsa Greenwood Race Massacre. That's the name of the actual video on YouTube, and they broadcasted it live today. The House Judiciary Committee on YouTube is House Committee on the Judiciary. House Committee on the Judiciary. So all these hearings that take place in the House of Representatives in the U.S. Senate, they're usually broadcasted on C-SPAN and also YouTube. Okay, so you can learn a lot about the political process by watching some of these hearings. Okay, all right, we're going to go to clip 2 here. Also, you're going to hear more testimony from Viola Fletcher. If we look at this article here written by Deneen L. Brown for Washington Post, for the Washington Post, one of the last survivors of the 1921 Tulsa Massacre, 107-year-old wants justice. Viola Fletcher, who lived through the Tulsa Race Massacre a century ago, testified before Congress on May 19th on the push for reparations. Now, I don't know if it was done on purpose to have it on May 19th, Malcolm X's birthday, and Malcolm X said by any means necessary. But that's what I'm gonna tell my children. Okay, that's what I'm gonna say. They had it on Malcolm X's birthday on purpose. Okay, we know the 100th anniversary is coming up, but it's good that it's on Malcolm X's birthday. All right, so now the estimates of 300 African Americans dead, that's a conservative estimate. The reason why is because there were reports of people seeing bodies dumped into the river and different things like this. So we know some African Americans fled to surrounding towns and died there as well. So we don't have a accurate number on how many died. So dressed in a mint blazer and speaking in a stronger voice, Viola Fletcher, known as Mother Fletcher, told the story of what happened in Tulsa as the city prepares to mark the massacre's 100th anniversary at the end of this month. Okay, she said on May 31st of 1921, I went to bed at my family's home in Greenwood. She said the neighborhood I fell asleep in that night was rich, not just in terms of wealth, but in culture and heritage. The neighborhood I fell asleep in that night was rich, not just in terms of wealth, but in culture and heritage. She said, my family had a beautiful home. We had great neighbors. I had friends to play with. I felt safe. I had everything a child could need. I had a bright future. She said within a few hours, all of that was gone. Okay, we're going to deal with this on the other side of the break. We're going to let you hear from Mother Fletcher, Viola Fletcher as well, the oldest living survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Also, if you like this type of information, you want to support the African History Network, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And remember, you can still register for the online course that I teach on Saturdays. You can watch from around the world, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 9-week online course I teach 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can register for it at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll be back in a few minutes. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. Stand by. We'll be back in a few minutes. How's everybody doing? We got John Ray, T.C. Cook, Kerry, just a few of the people watching. Everybody share this broadcast on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in as well. Who watched the hearing today? Did anybody watch the hearing today? All right, back from break in a couple of minutes. There's a lot of history covered in today. All right, stand by, everybody. Back from break in 3 minutes. Stand by. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Wednesday, May 19th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number. If you have a quick question or comment, 313-778 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. All right, so right before the break, we were talking about the hearing that took place today in the House of Representatives, the House Judiciary Committee, House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties, and this dealt with the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. We know we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Also, I will be in Atlanta for the Juneteenth Festival. I just talked to Bob Johnson, organizer of the Juneteenth Festival, so I'll be down there. That's Friday, June 18th through Sunday, June 20th at Centennial Park. You'll hear more about that. They have a lot of performers. He just said they have Angie Stone performing. They have Ken Ford, who's a jazz violinist. So it's 3 days of festivities. So you'll hear more about that as well. But I'll be down there. I'll be a vendor and I'll be doing presentations also. Okay. We were talking about the Tulsa Race Massacre right before the break. And Viola Fletcher, the oldest living survivor, she's 107 years old. She testified today along with her brother, Hugh's uncle Reed Van Ellis, and Leslie Benningfield Randall. Okay. I want to go to clip 2. Here's an excerpt of some of her testimony. This is from MSNBC. She said, "I have lived through the massacre every day." Tulsa Massacre survivors testified before House committee. Let's go to clip 2, Shakita.
Living survivors of that massacre flew to Washington to share their stories and demand justice. Mr. Hughes Van Ellis, known as Uncle Red, is 100 years old, and his sister, Ms. Viola Fletcher, or Mother Fletcher as she's known, is 107 years old. Listen to what she experienced during one of the darkest moments in U.S. history.
I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot. I will not. And other survivors do not. And our descendants do not.
Both were gracious enough to stop for a minute to talk with me on their way to the White House, they said, for a meeting with Vice President Harris. It's important for you to be here in Washington today and share your story.
Well, we really wanted justice over the affair after a long time ago. It was like before now that something has been done about it. So that's why we're here trying to make sure we get justice for it.
Ms. Fletcher says as a result of the massacre, she never finished school beyond the 4th grade, never made much money, and struggles to support herself. The survivors are part of a reparations lawsuit filed last year, which argues that Oklahoma and Tulsa are responsible for what happened during that massacre, which historians believe left as many as 300 black people dead, 10,000 homeless, and the community of Greenwood destroyed. Mr. Van Ellis, who is a World War II veteran, told lawmakers today, quote, "Please do not let me leave this earth without justice." Blessings to the both of them.
Hey, Shakita, was that clip 2? We played clip 1 before the break. Was that clip 2 you just played? Or was that clip 1 again? I want to go to clip 2. But let me send me a message. Let me know which one that was. I want to go to clip 2. All right. So when we look at Tulsa, it's important to note that Tulsa, Oklahoma was founded by Creek Indians around 1836. This ties it to a deep history. And a few days ago, we talked about the Trail of Tears and how there were Africans on the Trail of Tears as well. It wasn't just Native Americans on the Trail of Tears, because the Choctaw, Chickasaw Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians all owned African slaves. Okay. And when the Indian Removal Act is signed by President Andrew Jackson in 1830, you're going to have these Native Americans pushed off their land in southeastern United States. They all go out west on what's known as the Trail of Tears, over 1,000 miles on the Trail of Tears. They go into Oklahoma. Okay. So Oklahoma is U.S. territory at this time, but it's not a state in the Union. Oklahoma becomes a state in the Union in 1907. So the Creek Indians are going to go into an area that they call Tallahassee. Tallahassee is going to be later known as Tulsa. Okay, Tulsa comes from the Creek Indian word Tallahassee. All right. Do we have clip 2 ready, or what? Let me know what's going on. All right. So this is an article that we talked about a few days ago when I dealt with African Americans on the Trail of Tears. Okay. When I dealt with the African Americans on the Trail of Tears, Native Americans weren't alone on the Trail of Tears. Enslaved Africans were too. Native Americans weren't alone on the Trail of Tears. Enslaved Africans were too. This is from May 9th, 2021. And it deals with some of this history, but it ties into how the Trail of Tears then ties into Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, and Greenwood. Nearly a century before Tulsa's Greenwood district became a beacon of Black prosperity in the 1920s, Native American tribes and thousands of Black enslaved people arrived in the state of Oklahoma. Okay, and members of the 5 tribes, the Chickasaw, Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole, had been forced out of their homelands in the Deep South, leading to the exodus known as Trail of Tears. All right. In this article, Elena E. Roberts, who is a associate professor, I think she's associate professor of history, associate professor of history at the University of Pittsburgh. The new book that she has out is talked about here. I've been here all the while, Black freedom on native land. But she said owning slaves was part of their strategy of what are known as the 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. Owning slaves was part of their strategy to assimilate into American society, and it allowed them to be seen as different from other Native people and as more civilized. Okay, so read this article as well. Go back and we did a show dealing with a few days ago, dealing with African slaves were on the Trail of Tears 2. African slaves were on the Trail of Tears 2. Go back and check out that show that we did also. All right, now I want to go to some more of the testimony. We're going to go to clip 3. This is from the actual testimony today in the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties. You're going to hear Viola Fletcher, 107 years old, the oldest living survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. You're going to hear her give her testimony. Okay, let's go to clip 3.
Yes. My name is Viola Ford Fletcher. I'm the daughter of Lucinda Ellis and John Wesley Ford of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm the sister of Hughes Van Ellis, who's also here today. I'm a survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. 2 weeks ago, I celebrated my 107th birthday. Today, I'm visiting Washington, D.C. for the first time in my life. I'm here seeking justice, and I'm asking my country to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa in 1921. On May 31st in 21, I went to bed in my family's home in Greenwood. Neighbors of Tulsa, the neighborhood I felt asleep in that night, was rich, not just in terms of wealth, but in culture, community, heritage, and my family had a beautiful home. We had great neighbors, and I had friends to play with. I felt safe. I had everything a child could need. I had a bright future ahead for me. Greenwood could, Greenwood still had given me the chance to truly make it in this country. Within a few hours, all of that was gone. The night of the massacre, I was awakened by my family. My parents and 5 siblings were there. I was told we had to leave, and that was it. I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see Black men being shot, Black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see Black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot. I will not. And other survivors do not. And our descendants do not. When my family was forced to leave Tulsa, I lost my chance of an education. I never finished school past the fourth grade. I have never made much money in my country. State and city took a lot from me. Despite this, I spent time supporting the war effort in the shipyards of California. But most of my life, I was a domestic worker serving white families. I never made much money, but to this day, I can barely afford my everyday needs. All the while, the city of this Tulsa have unjustly used the names and stories of victims like me to enrich myself and its white allies through the 30s million, through the 30s million ways by the Tulsa Centennial Commissioner while I continue to live in poverty. I am a 107-year-old and have never been seen justice. I pray that one day I will. I have been blessed with a long life and have seen the best and the worst of this country. I think about the terror, horror inflicted upon Black people in this country every day. This subcontinuity has the power to lead us down a better path. I'm asking that my country acknowledge what has been happened to me, the traumas and the pain, the loss, and I ask survivors and descendants to be given a chance to seek justice, open the door. All of you know how easy it is to deny that a violent mob threatened your lives and took your property. For 70 years, the city of Tulsa and its Chamber of Commerce told us that the massacre didn't happen, like we didn't see it with our own eyes. You have me here right now. You see Mother Randall, you see my brother, Hughes Van Ellis. We live this history and we can't ignore it. It's our lives with us. Oh my goodness. We lost everything that day, our homes, our churches, our newspapers, our theaters, our lives. Greenwood represented all the best of what was possible for Black people in America and for all the people. No one cared about us for almost 100 years. We and our history have been forgotten, washed away. This Congress must recognize us and our history. For Black America, for the white Americans, and for all Americans, that's some justice. Is that it? Thank you.
Do you want to say anything else?
I thought it was another page.
Do you want to say anything else?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you want to say?
No, it's not.
Thank you very much. We appreciate very much your testimony.
Okay, pause it right there, Shakita. Okay, so that was... Okay, pause it right there. So that was 107-year-old Viola Fletcher, the oldest living survivor of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. If we look at the article here from Washington Post, and we're going to go to clip 4 from Malcolm X here in just a minute. So Viola Fletcher's brother also testified today. He's 100 years old. His name is Hughes Van Ellis, H-U-G-E-S, Hughes Van Ellis. He's a World War II veteran, and he broke into tears as he told the subcommittee how he fought for the United States overseas, but had not received justice in his own country. He said, "Please do not let me leave this earth without justice like all the other massacre survivors." Now, another survivor who testified is 106 years old. let's see Benningfield Randall. And let's see Benningfield Randall testified virtually from Tulsa, uh, virtually from Tulsa, Oklahoma, virtually, recalling how safe and loved she felt as a 6-year-old living with her grandmother in Greenwood. Quote, then everything changed. White men with guns came and destroyed my community. We could not understand why. What did we do to them? End quote. Now, the white mob killed African-American Tulsans and burned Black-owned homes and businesses. Um, Leslie Benningfield Randall said, I still see it in my, well, let me back up. She said, we were told that they just dumped dead bodies in the river, okay? And in my research on this, because I'm in a documentary dealing with the history of Black Wall Street, Resurrecting Black Wall Street, the blueprint from Your Black World Films. I also have a 2.5-hour lecture that I've done dealing with the history of Black Wall Street. In the book by Hannibal B. Johnson on Black Wall Street. Where's Hannibal's book? The book by Hannibal B. Johnson dealing with right here, Resurrecting Black Wall Street. This is probably the best book dealing with the history of Black Wall Street. I know Robin Walker has one on Black Wall Street. Robin Walker's book is good, but this is one of the sources in Robin Walker's book on Black Wall Street. This one right here by Hannibal B. Johnson is deep. Black Wall Street from riot to renaissance in Tulsa's historic Greenwood district. So when I was preparing for my lecture some years ago, the history of Black Wall Street, man, I did deep research on this, and I saw how this tied into the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866. Because I called Dr. Claude Anderson about it, because he and I we were talking, and he's one of my teachers. I've interviewed him for a number of times, and we were talking about the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866. And then when I read this book by Hannibal B. Johnson, then I saw how the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties tied into the origins of Black Wall Street, because a lot of the early landowners in Tulsa, a lot of the early African-American landowners in Tulsa, Oklahoma, what was North Tulsa, because North Tulsa is where African-Americans were segregated to. South Tulsa is where white people lived, and it's the railroad tracks that separated North Tulsa from South Tulsa. And in North Tulsa, you had a business district that started at the intersection of Greenwood, Archer, and Pine. This business district became known as Black Wall Street. Okay, the Greenwood district and also Black Wall Street. So a lot of the early African American landowners in Tulsa got their land because of these Indian treaties that gave the those who were enslaved by the 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. It gave them land, it gave them citizenship and all the rights of being members of the Native American nations. They got all types of benefits. They got cash payments as well, but they received land. And this is also how you get a Sarah Rector, who we talked about a few days ago. This is also how you get a Sarah Rector who lived in Oklahoma, and her family, they were owned by the Creek Indians, okay, and her parents, and her family's going to get land because of the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties, and she was known as the richest Afro-American girl in America. In like 1913, she became a millionaire because oil was discovered on her land. So the other thing was, oil was discovered in the early 1900s in Tulsa. And you're going to have African Americans who also get rich off of the oil industry as well. But if you read this article here from face-to-faceafrica.com, meet Sarah Rector, R-E-C-T-O-R, the 12-year-old who became America's youngest Black millionaire in 1913. This article is from July 13th, 2018. So studying about Sarah Rector then ties into this history as well. Okay. All right. So very quickly here, I want to talk about Malcolm X. So today is the 96th anniversary of the birth of Malcolm X, Malcolm Little, born May 19th, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska. And we talk about Malcolm here often. Malcolm X is very misunderstood. Dr. King is very much misunderstood as well. Malcolm joins the civil rights joins the civil rights movement when he separates from the Nation of Islam. He officially separates from the Nation of Islam May 8th, 1964. We know that later in that same month, on I'm sorry, March 8th, 1964. March 8th, 1964. We know later in that same month, on March 26th, 1964, we know that Malcolm is going to meet with Dr. King for the first and only time at the U.S. Senate debate for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Malcolm is then going to 3 days later deliver a speech called the Ballad of the Bullet, March 29th, 1964, in Washington Heights, New York. And he delivers the Ballad of the Bullet 3 times that I know of, March 29th, 1964. And then also he delivers it April 3rd, 1964 in Cleveland, Ohio. And then also he delivers it on April 4th, 1964 here in Detroit at the historic King Solomon Baptist Church. But Malcolm is going to join the civil rights movement. This is not talked about a lot oftentimes when people talk about Malcolm. And Malcolm, when he meets Dr. King, and there's a big article from the Washington Post that deals with the day Dr. King met Malcolm X. Malcolm tells Dr. King that I'm throwing all of my effort into the heart of the civil rights movement. Okay. There's also a piece from PBS.org, Malcolm and the Civil Rights Movement, that deals with different aspects of Malcolm's life. But, you know, Malcolm going to speak to SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, things like this is oftentimes not talked about. Malcolm meeting with Coretta Scott King when Dr. King is in jail in about I think it's early 65. But Malcolm tells Dr. King, I'm throwing myself into the heart of the civil rights struggle. This is March 26, 1964. So Malcolm's going to organize the Organization of Afro-American Unity, the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And on June 28th, 1964, Malcolm is going to deliver a speech that announces it's the founding rally, actually, of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Okay, we're going to go to and what Malcolm does in this speech, and you can read the full speech at blackpast.org. Blackpast.org. Okay, it's a fantastic speech because Malcolm lays out the philosophy of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, and he lays out their platform. Okay, and it's 5 points to the platform. He lays out a economic platform. He lays out first. He deals with the establishment of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Then he talks about self-defense. Okay. Then he talks about education. Education is an important element in the struggle for human rights. It is the means to help our children and our people rediscover their identity and thereby increase their self-respect. Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs only to the people who prepare for it today. Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs only to the people who prepare for it today. So he goes out and lays out an education plan and talks about the need for understanding African history. He said, and I must point out right there, when I was in Africa, because this is after he gets back from his Hajj to Mecca, and then he goes on a tour of 14 different African nations, okay, including going to Ghana and meeting not just Kwame Nkrumah, but also meeting Maya Angelou in Ghana as well. And Maya Angelou is going to come back to the U.S. and help Malcolm organize the Organization of Afro-American Unity as well. Maya Angelou worked with Dr. King, and she worked with Malcolm X. Okay, all right. So you have this take place as well. Then you have the third. So you have three education. You have four: politics and economics. Politics and economics. Okay, so he lays out this political and economic platform. He also talks about the need for voting strategically. Okay, not voting just to vote, but voting strategically. So he lays out politics and economics, and then the fifth platform he lays out social. He says this organization is responsible only to the Afro-American people and the Afro-American community. This organization is not responsible to anybody but us. We don't have to ask the man downtown, can we demonstrate? We don't have to ask the man downtown, what tactics can we use to demonstrate our resentment against his criminal abuse? We don't have to ask his consent. We don't have to ask his endorsement. We don't have to ask his permission. Anytime we know that an unjust condition exists and is illegal and unjust, we will strike it by any means necessary. We will strike it by any means necessary and strike all at whatever and whoever gets in the way. Okay, I want to go to the beginning of this speech here. Let's go to clip 4, Shakita. And take it off mute.
Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies. Everybody is here. As many of you know, last March, when it was announced that I was no longer in the Black Muslim movement, it was pointed out that it was my intention to work among the 22 million non-Muslim Afro-Americans and to try and form some type of organization or create a situation where the young people, our young people, the students and others, could study the problems of our people for a period of time and then come up with a new analysis and give us some new ideas and some new suggestions as to how to approach a problem that too many other people have been playing around with for too long. And that we would have some kind of meeting and determine at a later date whether to form a Black nationalist party or a Black nationalist army. There have been many of our people across the country from all walks of life who have taken it upon themselves to try and pool their ideas and to come up with some kind of solution to the problem that confronts all of our people. And tonight we are here to try and get an understanding of what it is they've come up with. Also, recently, when I was blessed to make a trip or pilgrimage, a religious pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca, where I met many people from all over the world, plus spent many weeks in Africa, trying to broaden my own scope and get more of an open mind to look at the problem as it actually is. One of the things that I realized, and I realized this even before going over there, was that our African brothers have gained their independence faster than you and I here in America have. They've also gained recognition and respect as human beings much faster than you and I. Just 10 years ago on the African continent, our people were colonized. They were suffering all forms of colonization, oppression, exploitation, degradation, humiliation, discrimination, and every other kind of agent. And in a short time, they have gained more independence, more recognition, more respect as human beings than you and I have. And you and I live in a country which is supposed to be the citadel of education, freedom, justice, democracy, and all of those other pretty sounding words. So it was our intention to try and find out what was our African brothers doing to get results so that you and I could study what they had done and perhaps gain from that study or benefit from their experience. And my traveling over there was designed to help to find out how. One of the first things that the independent African nations did was to form an organization called the Organization of African Unity. The purpose of our organization of Afro-American Unity, which has the same aim and objective, to fight whoever gets in our way.
Okay. All right. I think that's it. Okay. So check out the article from Washington Post. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Martin Luther King Jr. met Malcolm X just once. The photo still haunts us with what was lost, by Deneen L. Brown. Excellent article. In the article, it talks about Malcolm telling Dr. King when they met, March 26, 1964. Malcolm tells Dr. King, "I'm throwing myself into the heart of the civil rights struggle." Okay. I'm throwing myself into the heart of the civil rights struggle. Then if we look at this piece here from PBS.org, American Public Broadcasting System. This one here is Malcolm and the Civil Rights Movement. Malcolm and the Civil Rights Movement. And it talks about Malcolm when he leaves the Nation of Islam and speaking to civil rights leaders, meeting with SNCC and going to meet with Coretta Scott King, different things like this. Okay. All right. Those watching on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a few more minutes. We're out of time here on 910 a.m. Superstation. Remember, right now, it's correct wrong behavior is not over till we win Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by. Okay. All right, everybody, be sure to, who still needs to register for the online course that I teach on Saturdays? Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 9-week online course that I teach. We do it on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. You can watch from around the world. You don't have to be in class live to watch. You can watch after class is over with. All the sessions are archived, so you'll still have access even after the course is over with. You can watch over and over again. All right. We have the information. We just posted a link here. We have the information on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So when you go to our website and you'll scroll down, you'll see the information for the radio show. You'll see the information for my radio show, and then you'll see the information for the online course. Let's see, this is loading up now. You'll see the information for the online course right here. Still waiting for it to load. And then click right here to register. Takes you to the next page. And then click on enroll. The class is regularly $130, on sale $80. We do I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. We deal with thousands of years of history. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. And we do with the teachings that the Moors taken to Europe that come from the Nile Valley region of Africa. And this is going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. And we do what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So we just posted the link here. You can register for that. As soon as you register, you can watch the class we just did this past Saturday. Like I said, all the sessions are archived. There's also the classes that I did in February and March of 2021. You can watch that as well. Okay. So right before the break, we were talking about the 96th birthday of Malcolm X. And there's a let's see here. Okay, so we have it talks about Malcolm meeting with some civil rights leaders and speaking to SNCC. This is in 64 and early 65. They have a section here, no longer adversaries. Bit by bit, Malcolm began a process of engagement with the movement, the civil rights movement. He went to the March on Washington and witnessed. He went to the March on Washington, August 28, 1963. He witnessed a debate on the Civil Rights Act bill in 1964. In the Ballad of the Bullet, Malcolm references being there to see the debate over the Civil Rights Act of 64. Okay, he references this in the Ballad of the Bullet. Malcolm said, "I'm throwing myself into the heart of the civil rights struggle," Malcolm tells Dr. King, "where previously his separatism had meant no interest in voting. He now told Mississippi youth that he was with voter registration efforts 1000%. Now he's talking about voting strategically. He's not alliance to a political party. It's not about a political party. It's about policies. He's talking about voting strategically. Malcolm accepted an invitation from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, to speak in Selma, Alabama, and had conciliatory words for Coretta Scott King, whose husband was then in jail at the time. Quote, I want Dr. King to know that I want Dr. King to know that I did not come to Selma to make his job difficult. Quote, if the white people realize that the alternative, if the white people realize what the alternative is, perhaps they will be more willing to hear Dr. King. If the white people realize what the alternative is, perhaps they will be more willing to hear Dr. King. Now, while never embracing Dr. King's Christianity or his commitment to nonviolence near the end of his life, Malcolm X gave indications that he was willing to work with Dr. King, that they could be, if not exactly partners, then at least no longer adversaries in the quest for civil rights. Now, I've talked about this before. I don't have time to get into a lot of it, but read the book from Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr., This Nonviolent Stuff That Gets You Killed, How Guns Made the Civil Rights Movement Possible. All right. Where is it? I have it around here. This Nonviolent Stuff That Gets You Killed, How Guns Made the Civil Rights Movement Possible. Because as Professor James Small has told me, and others have told me, the civil rights movement was not a nonviolent movement. If it had not been for Negroes with guns, you would not have had a civil rights movement. Okay, it's Negroes with guns, it's African Americans with guns, who are largely protecting the civil rights workers. This is even before. The Deacons for Defense and Justice were founded. Okay, even before that, you had Negroes with guns. I mean, you had people like Robert F. Williams and the Black Guard. Okay, but let me see, where is? Hold on. I'm not sure where my book is. I don't know where it is around here. But this Nonviolent Stuff That Gets You Killed by Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr. Okay. Check out that book. And they break down the history. And Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr. was a field secretary for SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, for 5 years in rural Mississippi. Okay, and he talked about how it was African Americans with guns down in Mississippi who were protecting the civil rights workers. All right, and he said that, you know, they never stayed at somebody's house who didn't have a gun over the fireplace or on the nightstand or something like that. Because in the South, you know, you grew up in the gun culture. People grow up on farms, they're hunting, things like this. You have to be able to defend your farm. You have to be able to defend yourself. You have to be able to defend your livestock against predators, animals trying to kill your livestock. So you grew up in a gun culture. And he said a lot of the civil rights activists coming from the North, a lot of them had not experienced that, especially a lot of the white civil rights activists coming from the North. You know, that may have been something they were not used to. But he said when they first got down there to Mississippi, he said the black people in Mississippi they told him, "We know you're nonviolent, but we're not, and we're not going to let these white people kill you." And it was African Americans with guns who are protecting the civil rights workers. Okay, so read the book. This nonviolent stuff that gets you killed: How Guns Made the Civil Rights Movement Possible. And it's also on Amazon. Let me see here. So I can't find my copy of it. Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr. Yeah, this one right here. This is the cover of it. Because this is the cover of the copy I have. Let's see if we can blow this up. Hold on. All right. Yeah, this nonviolent stuff that gets you killed: How Guns Made the Civil Rights Movement Possible. And they should have a write-up here. Yeah. This is from the book. Visiting Martin Luther King Jr. during the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott. Okay. Let me pull this up here. Over to this. Visiting Martin Luther King Jr. during the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott, journalist William Worthy, Worthy, journalist William Worthy almost sat on a loaded pistol, just for self-defense, Dr. King assured him, because Dr. King owned guns until Bayard Rustin convinced him to get rid of his guns. All right. Just for self-defense. It was not the only weapon that Dr. King kept for such a purpose. One of his advisors remembered the Reverend's Montgomery, Alabama home as an arsenal. One of Dr. King's advisors remembered Dr. King's Montgomery, Alabama home as an arsenal. Like King, many ostensibly nonviolent civil rights activists, many ostensibly means on the surface, but not for real. It's a front. Many ostensibly nonviolent civil rights activists embrace their constitutional rights to self-protection, yet this crucial dimension of the Afro-American freedom struggle has long been ignored by history. In the book, This Nonviolent Stuff Will Get You Killed, by Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr., he recovers this history, describing the vital role that armed self-defense has played in the survival and liberation of African American communities. Drawing on his experience in the civil rights movement and giving voice to its participants, Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr. lays bare the paradoxical relationship between the nonviolent civil rights struggle and the long history and importance of African Americans taking up arms to defend themselves against white supremacist violence. Okay? Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr. lays bare the paradoxical relationship between the nonviolent civil rights struggle and the long history and importance of African Americans taking up arms to defend themselves against white supremacist violence. All right, so check out this book, this Nonviolent Stuff That Gets You Killed, How Guns Made the Civil Rights Movement Possible. Check with your local African American book dealer. All right, now, so read those articles here. I had to get to this last story and I have to get out of here. I have a lot of work to do. Lastly, there was a article that Malcolm X's daughter wrote, Ayasa. She wrote an article for the Washington Post, and check out this article as well. Malcolm X's daughter, it's time to pull the knife all the way out. It's time to pull the knife all the way out. This is from Washington Post, and what's this? This is Rachel Hatzipanagos for the Washington Post. So read this article as well. And she deals with different things going on today, the Black Lives Matter movement, et cetera, and what she thinks Malcolm X would say about it. Malcolm X's daughter, it's time to pull the knife all the way out. Ayasa Shabazz reflects on the late civil rights leader's legacy on his 96th birthday. Okay, so read this article also. It's a really, really good article from Washington Post. There was one from news1.com dealing with quotes from Malcolm X. We posted that earlier today. Read the one from blackpast.org that has the transcript of the speech that Malcolm delivered in 1964, June 28th, 1964. The speech has become known as By Any Means Necessary because it's in that speech where he says, we'll bring this into existence by any means necessary. That's in that speech. Okay, and then there was one from news1.com today as well that dealt with 5 quotes, Malcolm X's most iconic speeches. Malcolm X's most iconic speeches. And they have some clips of his speeches in here also. Message to the Grassroots, The Ballad of the Bullet, By Any Means Necessary, the one June 28th, 1964. But check this one out as well. Malcolm X's most iconic speeches on what would have been his 96th birthday. Many of Malcolm X's iconic speeches continue to leave an indelible impact on Black America and the world as a whole. Okay. And this is from news1.com, which is an African American owned and operated news source. All right, lastly, Paul Mooney passed away today. Legendary comedian Paul Mooney. And I remember Paul Mooney on the Richard Pryor TV show that Richard Pryor had in 1977 on NBC. Only lasted something like 4 episodes. But news1.com has a piece. Well, TV1 has a piece on Paul Mooney. And we posted this earlier today. Comedian Paul Mooney passed away at his Oakland, California home on Wednesday, May 19th, after suffering a heart attack. He was 79 years old. Now, Roland Martin broke the news on Twitter, writing, breaking news, comedic legend Paul Mooney has passed away. His cousin Rudy Ely just called me from Paul's phone and said he passed away 2 hours ago after suffering a heart attack at his home in Oakland, California. Now, minutes later, the news was confirmed on the comedian's official Twitter account. Here's the tweet from Paul Mooney's official Twitter account. Someone posted, his family posted, "Thank you all from the bottom of all of our hearts. You're all the best. Mooney World, the godfather of comedy, one moon, many stars, one moon, many stars. To all in love with this great man, many thanks." Now, he was born Paul Gladney, Gladney, Paul Gladney, the Oakland, California native, is best known as a writer for the late comedian Richard Pryor. Okay. And, I remember seeing different specials with Paul Mooney on them. And I remember also Paul Mooney, the first season of Sanford and Son. The first season of Sanford and Son, Richard Pryor and Paul Mooney were writers, okay, on the first season of Sanford and Son as well. I think that was the first season. So I remember seeing Richard Pryor and Paul Mooney's name in the credits, if I remember correctly. But just seeing different interviews with Paul Mooney over the years, he had a very distinctive voice. Meeting one of the Mooney twins also out in California when I was speaking out there at the Caress Unity Center a few years ago as well. So this is a big loss, a huge comedic genius. Paul Mooney is. Let me bring this up here. Okay. All right. So if we look at, I want to look at something here also. Just one second. Paul Mooney co-wrote 2 episodes of Sanford and Son, season 2, episode 3, The Diary, and season 2, episode 11. Season 2, episode 11 with longtime friend and fellow comedian Richard Pryor. Okay, so season 2, episode 3, The Diary, and then season 2, episode 11 was Sanford and Son and Sister Makes 3. Okay, yeah. So he and Richard Pryor co-wrote 2 episodes of Sanford and Son. This is from Sanford. Let's see. This is from Sanford and Son .fandom, FANDOM.com. This is about Paul Mooney. We'll post this link here. Well, let's flip over to this page. Just a second. Yeah, sanfordandson.fandom.com/wiki/Paul Mooney. This is about Paul Mooney. Born August 4th, 1941, comedian Paul Mooney co-wrote 2 episodes of Sanford and Son, The Diary. That's what we just talked about, the episode, The Diary, with Betty Jean. Betty Jean was overweight and her thighs rubbed together. She was trying to lose weight. Betty Jean. The Diary, season 2, episode 3. and Sanford and Son and Sister Makes Three, season 2, episode 11. He co-wrote those with longtime friend and fellow comedian actor Richard Pryor, a controversial but brilliantly talented stand-up comedian. Like Richard Pryor, Paul Mooney gained a following during the late 1960s, early 70s as a new wave of comics such as himself, Richard Pryor, and Dick Gregory and George Carlin began to test the waters and push the boundaries of what was once considered too hot to touch in stand-up comedy, tackling the subjects of racism, war, sex, the drug, and counterculture and religion, while keeping fans in stitches with their onstage presence. Okay. Paul Mooney, like his longtime friend Richard Pryor, has worn several entertainment hats as a talented comedian, comedy sketch writer, social critic, and television and film actor. He was also featured on the True TV reality show Mars Roadhouse. Okay, so you can read this here about Paul Mooney also. Now, back to the article from I want to go back to the article here from TV1 for just a minute. Okay, so he was born Paul Gladney. The Oakland native is best known as a writer for the late comedian Richard Pryor. His portrayal of Sam Cooke in the Buddy Holly story and Junebug in Spike Lee's 2000 satirical comedy drama Bamboozled. Okay, I remember Bamboozled as well. I didn't realize he played Sam Cooke in the Buddy Holly story, though. Okay, I'm going to have to go back and watch the Buddy Holly story. Now, Paul Gladney coined the nickname Mooney after Paul Mooney, Muni, from the 1932 Scarface film. Okay, and they mean 30. They mean 32 or 82. Which? Let me see something here. Was it a Scarface film in 1932? Okay, so there was a yeah. Scarface, the shame of the Scarface, shame. Okay, so this is violent gangster climbs the ladder of success in the mob. Yeah, so there's one in 1932. The screenplay by Ben Hecht is based loosely on the 1929 novel by Armitage Trail, which was inspired by Al Capone. Okay. Yeah, so there was a Scarface film in 1932. Yeah, the Scarface film in 1932, and okay, Paul Mooney was a Mooney, Muni. He was an actor in the film. Paul Mooney's performance in Scarface as the quintessential gangster anti-hero contributed greatly to his rapid ascent into his acclaimed film career. All right, this is now this is dealing with the Scarface film from 1932. This is dealing with the Scarface film from 1932, not to be confused with Al Pacino as Scarface. So there it is. Howard Hughes presents Scarface, Paul Mooney, and Dvorak, okay, as Scarface. The film stars Paul Mooney as Antonio Tony Camonte, a gangster who violently rises through the Chicago gangland. Interesting. Okay, so this is where Paul Gladney gets his last name Mooney from. He just spelled it differently for his stage name. All right, now. So he began as a ringmaster at the Gaddy Charles Circus, where he found himself telling and writing jokes. This eventually landed him his first professional work as a writer for Richard Pryor in an appearance on Saturday Night Live, and ultimately the head writer for the Richard Pryor Show. The comedic genius's jokes spanned over a variety of television shows and decades. He created the iconic character Homie D. Clown in Living Color, In Living Color, and Negro Damas in the Chappelle Show with Dave Chappelle. Paul Gladney or Paul Mooney also wrote for the 70s popular sitcoms Sanford and Son and Good Times. All right, so rest in peace, Paul Mooney. I didn't realize he created the character of Homie D. Clown from In Living Color. But that sounds like something Paul Mooney would do as well. All right, so look, that's going to do it for us today. Be sure to register for the online course that I teach on Saturdays. Next class is Saturday, May 22nd. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. I just posted the link here. And it's also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And if you want to support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. When you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN Show, SHOW. All right, so that's going to do it for us here. We'll be back tomorrow. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.